Where are you really from? Not your hometown, not your passport, but in the deepest biological sense, where did your story begin? To explore that question, imagine boarding a train. This is no ordinary journey. It's a descent through time. Each station a generation, each stop a revelation. You move backward, past your parents, your grandparents, great-grandparents, names you may never have heard. You leave behind countries and languages, customs and borders. Eventually, you pass through medieval villages, Stone Age camps, icy tundras, and shadowy forests filled with unfamiliar creatures. With every turn of the wheels, your ancestry becomes more distant, more ancient, and more astonishing. This isn't just metaphor, it's encoded in you. Every cell in your body carries a record of survival, of migration, of transformation. You are not a standalone entity. You are a culmination, an unbroken biological lineage stretching back millions of years. Tracing your lineage isn't about nostalgia, it's about perspective. For much of history, we've been told who we are based on surnames, birthplace, or culture. But genetics offers a different kind of map, one not drawn by empires or wars, but by time, chance, and inheritance. Your DNA doesn't care about nationality. It tells stories that reach far beyond the last century, back to ancient ice ages, forgotten continents, and the first sparks of humanity. With the tools of modern genetic science, we are now able to follow that line backward, past historical memory and deep into evolutionary time. By analyzing patterns in our genome, researchers can reconstruct migrations that took place long before writing, long before agriculture, even long before Homo sapiens. We can now see that what defines us isn't a single origin point, but a web of ancestral connections. And while you may never know every name in your family tree, the biological signals remain. Mutations, markers, fragments of ancient DNA. They whisper of past climates, distant homelands, and survival through unimaginable odds. You are not only someone's child, you are the descendant of countless survivors. To understand humanity, we begin not with mythology or monuments or even tools, but with the simple question, what lives inside our cells? That's where the story truly begins. Part 2. The Great Migration to America. Roughly 20,000 years ago, during the peak of the last ice age, a narrow bridge of frozen land connected two continents, Asia and North America. This was Beringia, a cold, treeless expanse of tundra, stretching between what is now Siberia and Alaska. Across this stark windswept landscape moved small bands of humans, bundled in fur, carrying stone tools, and following the migration routes of caribou and mammoth. They weren't explorers, they were survivors. Every step forward was a response to scarcity, to pressure, to change. These were not grand conquests, they were calculated moves in the ongoing battle for existence. The journey was not a single event. It unfolded slowly, over generations, as families shifted eastward in search of game and shelter. Their paths wound through glacial valleys, frozen rivers, and forests of ice. The Arctic sun offered little warmth. Food was uncertain. Predators were near. Yet these humans adapted, developing new clothing, new tools, new strategies for survival in a world carved by ice. Eventually, they reached the edges of a continent no one had ever touched before, North America. It was a world teeming with life. Towering mammoths, herds of bison in the thousands, saber-toothed cats lurking in the shadows. These early migrants hunted, gathered, and adapted. Over time, they spread, eastward, southward, across what would become Canada, the United States, Central and South America. Their descendants would form some of the most complex civilizations the Western Hemisphere would ever see. Today, the legacy of this migration endures, not in monuments or ruins, but in the genes of indigenous peoples throughout the Americas. DNA analysis reveals clear genetic ties between Native American populations and ancient peoples of Northeast Asia. These links speak to a shared origin, a common journey, and a single thread of humanity stretching across continents. The crossing of Beringia was not just a migration. It was a turning point in human history. It marked the final chapter in our species' global expansion, the moment when Homo sapiens reached every major landmass on Earth. It was cold, it was dangerous, it was extraordinary, and it happened not once, but many times, across generations, across ice, into the unknown. This is how the Americas were first peopled, not by chance, but by resilience. Art 3. The instinct to move. Movement is not just a choice, it is a biological imperative. Across the animal kingdom, survival often depends on mobility. Wildebeest crossing African plains, Arctic birds flying thousands of kilometers to nest, salmon returning upriver to spawn. These migrations aren't spontaneous, they're hardwired into biology, triggered by the changing seasons, shifting resources, or rising threats. Humans are no exception. Long before cities, before borders, before the first seeds were planted, our ancestors moved. They moved to follow herds, to find water, to escape drought or danger. The earliest humans didn't just travel, they lived on the move. The nomadic lifestyle was not an adaptation, it was the default. This behavior wasn't random, it was strategic, cultural, and deeply embedded in human evolution. The ability to walk upright freed the hands and eyes. It allowed us to carry tools, children, and memory. Over time, this mobility became one of our most powerful survival tools. We moved with purpose, and we brought our knowledge with us. The human journey was not a straight line. It branched, doubled back, crossed rivers, scaled mountains. From the savannas of East Africa to the islands of the Pacific, we walked. Each migration left traces, bones, tools, hearths, footprints, and in those traces, a pattern emerges, a map of motion carved into the earth itself. To an archaeologist, the planet is not just layers of rock, it is a living archive. Every shovel of soil can reveal a direction taken, a decision made, a migration completed. Shells found hundreds of miles from the sea, obsidian tools sourced from distant volcanoes, burial sites in unexpected places, all point to a truth. We are a species built to move. Even today, echoes of that instinct remain, in how we explore, in how we relocate, in the way we respond to crisis. Migration is not simply a reaction to hardship. It is part of who we are. The Earth holds our travel history in its bones, and the deeper we dig, the more we understand. Movement isn't just about reaching a destination, it's about what it means to be human. Part 4. The mystery of green rafts. How did monkeys get to South America? It's one of the strangest puzzles in evolutionary biology. Today, the forests of the Amazon are home to dozens of monkey species: howler monkeys, capuchins, tamarins. But according to the geological timeline, South America was completely isolated when these primates first appeared. There was no land bridge, no easy passage from other continents. So how did they get there? The answer might seem impossible until you look closer. Roughly 34 million years ago, during the Eocene epoch, something remarkable happened. Deep in the Peruvian Amazon, scientists discovered fossilized monkey teeth. Teeth that bore a striking resemblance to those of African primates from the same time period. These weren't convergent species, these were relatives, genetic cousins separated by an ocean. That discovery led to a bold hypothesis. What if early monkeys crossed the Atlantic? Not on boats, but on rafts, floating islands of natural vegetation torn from riverbanks by storms and floods, carried westward by ocean currents. It sounds implausible, but evidence from archaeology, geology, and molecular biology supports the idea. During the Eocene, the Atlantic Ocean was narrower than it is today. Large storms and powerful currents could have transported chunks of land, complete with small animals, plants, and soil, across vast distances. Rafting has been documented in modern events too, such as after the 2011 Japanese tsunami, when marine creatures traveled thousands of kilometers across the Pacific on debris. So imagine this, a mat of tangled trees and roots, with a few terrified monkeys clinging to its branches, drifting slowly across a prehistoric ocean. Most would perish, but a few survived, and once they landed in the forests of South America, they found an untouched world, ripe for evolution. That one improbable crossing may have shaped the entire primate landscape of a continent. The story of monkey migration reminds us, sometimes history isn't written in stone. Sometimes it floats. Part 5. Our distant cousins. Long before humans, before even the great apes we know today, the world was home to an extraordinary array of primates, each adapting, branching, and evolving along its own path. Among them were the ancestors not just of us, but of monkeys, gorillas, and chimpanzees. To understand where we came from, we must first meet the relatives we left behind. Around 33 million years ago, in what is now Egypt, a small primate named Egyptopithecus lived in the dense canopies of tropical forests. Often called the dawn ape, it wasn't quite a monkey and not yet an ape, but its forward-facing eyes and grasping hands marked a crucial evolutionary step. It could leap, climb, and see the world in 3 dimensions, a major advantage in the trees. Fast forward to about 20 million years ago, and we find Proconsul roaming the woodlands of East Africa. Larger, more ape-like, and with no tail, Proconsul is one of the earliest members of the ape lineage. Its flexible spine and robust limbs suggest it spent time both in the trees and on the ground. Though still lacking the full range of movement found in modern apes, Proconsul represents a transitional form, part monkey, part ape, entirely important. Then came Dryopithecus in Europe around 12 million years ago. This was a primate built for swinging, brachiation, moving effortlessly from branch to branch. Its long arms, curved fingers, and advanced dentition suggest a diet of fruits and leaves and a lifestyle much like that of modern chimpanzees. Fossils of Dryopithecus have been found across Spain, France, and Hungary. What these species show us is not a straight line from monkey to man, but a sprawling evolutionary tree with many branches. Each species represents a different experiment in adaptation, different climates, different diets, different forms of locomotion. Some vanished, some left descendants. Together, they illustrate a period of explosive primate diversity between 15 and 10 million years ago, a time when nature was trying out every possible form of primate life. These we are distant cousins, not our ancestors, but the echoes of what might have been. Part 6. The Gap in History. Between 14 and 7 million years ago, something strange appears in the fossil record. In Africa, the very continent believed to be the cradle of humankind, there's a sudden silence. For nearly 7 million years, fossils of ancient apes all but vanish. This puzzling absence is known as the African ape gap. Before the gap, Africa was teeming with primates. Species like Proconsul and Merodopithecus left behind a rich archive of bones, teeth, and fragments. After the gap, the record picks up again with creatures like Sahelanthropus, some of the earliest known hominins. But in between, almost nothing. Meanwhile, across the Mediterranean, Europe tells a very different story. From Spain to Greece, ape fossils are abundant. Dryopithecus, Organopithecus, and others flourished in forests that span much of the continent. For a time, it seemed as if the evolutionary spotlight had shifted north. This raises a difficult question. Was Africa truly empty of apes during this time? Or have we simply failed to find the evidence? Some scientists point to research bias. Over 90% of paleoanthropological fieldwork is concentrated in a handful of locations, often in regions with easier access, better funding, or established excavation teams. Many parts of Africa remain poorly explored. Important fossils may still lie buried, undisturbed beneath layers of sediment and time. Others suggest natural causes. Africa's environment during the late Miocene may not have favored fossilization. Dense tropical forests, acidic soils, and active erosion all work against preservation. Bones decay, traces vanish. Nature forgets. But science doesn't. The African ape gap may reflect a real evolutionary lull, or simply a hole in our understanding. Either way, it highlights the challenge of reconstructing deep history from incomplete records. And it reminds us that for every fossil we hold in our hands, there may be 1,000 more lost beneath our feet. Part 7. New pieces in the puzzle. For decades, the African ape gap cast doubt on the continent's central role in great ape evolution. But recent discoveries are beginning to change the narrative. In the 1980s, in Kenya's Samburu Hills, researchers unearthed a fossilized jawbone. It belonged to a large, unfamiliar primate, one that didn't quite fit any known category. Named Samburopithecus kiptolemy, this species dated to around 9.5 million years ago, right in the middle of the so-called gap. This was no ordinary primate. Its teeth were thick, built for grinding tough foods. Its jaw structure showed similarities to modern African great apes, especially gorillas. For the first time, scientists had direct evidence that apes were still evolving in Africa during the missing years. The gap wasn't empty. We had simply not looked deeply enough. Then, in 2007, another breakthrough. In Kenya's remote Nakali region, paleontologists uncovered another ancient jaw, this time belonging to Nakalopithecus nakayamai, dated at nearly 10 million years old. Like Samburopithecus, this species had robust molars, thick enamel, and facial features aligned with the lineage that includes chimpanzees, gorillas, and humans. Together, these finds did more than fill a gap. They recentered Africa in the story of human origins. No longer was Europe the sole stage for ape evolution. Dryopithecus and its Eurasian cousins were no longer the only candidates for ancestral links. With Samburopithecus and Nakalopithecus, Africa once again became the likely homeland of the lineages that gave rise to modern apes, and eventually, us. The implications are profound. These fossils suggest a deeper, richer evolutionary history in Africa than previously understood. And they challenge older assumptions shaped by the uneven distribution of research and fossil discoveries. What's clear now is this: the absence of evidence was never proof of absence. The fossils were always there, waiting beneath the soil of East Africa, buried by time, revealed by science. And with each discovery, the evolutionary puzzle becomes a little clearer, the timeline more complete. Africa was not silent. We simply hadn't been listening hard enough. Part 8. The reverse journey from Europe back to Africa. Evolution rarely moves in straight lines. For much of the 20th century, the dominant narrative was simple. Humanity began in Africa and spread outward. But new fossil discoveries and climate reconstructions are forcing scientists to reconsider that one-way path. What if some of our earliest ancestors actually left Africa, only to return millions of years later? This is the basis of a new hypothesis: out of Africa and back again. To understand it, we need to look at the Miocene epoch, roughly 15 to 5 million years ago, a period of dramatic environmental change. Paleoclimate studies reveal that this was not a time of stable ecosystems. Instead, the Earth experienced strong and prolonged El Niño-like conditions, warm oceans, shifting rainfall patterns, and rising temperatures. Tropical forests that once blanketed large parts of Africa began to shrink, replaced by open woodlands and grasslands. These changes likely forced ape populations to move. Some lineages may have migrated northward into Eurasia, where forest habitats still remained. There, they diversified, producing species like Dryopithecus and Ornithopithecus across Europe and Asia. But as conditions shifted again, some of those ape lineages may have reversed course, returning to Africa through land bridges like the Gumpfel-Therium corridor, which connected the continents during the late Miocene. This dual migration out of Africa and into Africa would explain the surprising mix of features seen in some fossil species found in East Africa. Primates like Nyctalopithecus and Sambaropithecus may be descended from lineages that first left, then came back, carrying with them genetic traits shaped by life in Eurasia. The idea challenges the traditional view of a linear march from primitive to modern. Instead, it suggests an evolutionary tree with tangled branches, species moving, adapting, crossing paths, disappearing, re-emerging. And it serves as a reminder: geography is not destiny. Evolution responds to pressure, not prediction. Climate drives movement. Movement shapes adaptation. And sometimes, the road forward loops back to where it all began. The journey of our ancestors was never one way. It was a web, crossing continents, crossing climates, crossing time. Part 9. Humankind multiplied. Between 800,000 and 125,000 years ago, Earth was not home to a single species of human, but to many. This period, known as the Middle Pleistocene, has been called the muddle in the middle, a confusing, fragmented chapter in our evolutionary history, filled with unanswered questions and species that blur the lines of what it means to be human. We often imagine a clean progression, one species giving rise to the next in orderly fashion. But the fossil record tells a messier story. At least half a dozen hominin species lived during this time. Homo erectus, the long-distance walker, still roamed parts of Asia. Homo heidelbergensis, likely the common ancestor of both Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, spread across Africa and Europe. In Indonesia, a small-bodied, tool-using hominin, Homo floresiensis, nicknamed the Hobbit, survived in isolation. And then there's Homo naledi. Discovered in South Africa's Rising Star cave system, Homo naledi defied expectations. Dating from between 335,000 and 236,000 years ago, it lived at the same time as early Homo sapiens. Yet its physical traits were a strange mosaic: long legs for walking upright, but a tiny brain no larger than a chimp's, primitive shoulders, curved fingers, teeth that looked oddly archaic. But it buried its dead. In a hidden, nearly inaccessible cave chamber, researchers found multiple individuals intentionally placed, perhaps ritually, after death. This suggests symbolic behavior, memory, and perhaps even culture, emerging in a species that wasn't supposed to be capable of such things. This coexistence of ancient and advanced, of small-brained and symbol-using, raises a troubling question. What else are we missing? The fossil record is incomplete by nature. Most organisms decay without a trace. Caves collapse, soil shifts, time erases. And so, for every species we've discovered, there may be others we've never seen. Entire human lineages could have lived and died without leaving more than a tooth or bone fragment. Genetic evidence offers further hints. Traces of ghost lineages appear in the DNA of modern humans, signals of interbreeding with hominins we've yet to identify. The story of humanity may involve many more characters than we once imagined. The Middle Pleistocene was not a bridge from ancient to modern. It was a crossroads. Multiple human species walked the earth, some large, some small, some toolmakers, some cave dwellers, some forgotten, some remembered in our genes. They hunted, adapted, competed, and perhaps even shared knowledge. The line between them and us was not always clear. We are the only ones left, but we were never alone. Part 10. The Missing Pages. In World War II, analysts studying damaged bomber planes concluded that the most reinforced areas should be where bullet holes were most common. But one mathematician, Abraham Wald, saw the flaw. Those were the planes that made it back. The real vulnerabilities, the fatal hits, were in the aircraft that never returned. This is known as survivorship bias. And the fossil record suffers from the same problem. The skeletons, skulls, and tools we uncover, the planes that came back, represent only a fraction of what once existed. Most species, traits, and behaviors left no trace at all. Bones dissolve, ash scatters, mudslides bury entire lifetimes. For a fossil to form and survive is a rare event. For us to find it, rarer still. So we build our understanding of human evolution on fragments. A jaw here, a molar there, an entire species reconstructed from a handful of teeth. It's remarkable what science can infer from so little. But it also means that vast parts of our story are missing. Some species may have flourished for thousands of years, only to vanish without fossil evidence. Some adaptations, like complex language, symbolic thought, or social structures, don't fossilize at all. The early use of fire, the first whispered myths, the very moment when a primate began to wonder who it was. All of it, gone. Our models, maps, and family trees are built on what remains, but they are shaped just as much by what doesn't. The gaps are not just empty spaces. They are reminders of how much we still don't know, and perhaps never will. Human evolution is not a closed book. It is a manuscript still being written, line by line, layer by layer. With every discovery, we turn a new page. And with every missing chapter, we're reminded of the fragility of knowledge. We are the latest edition of an ancient story, one written in genes, bones, and dust. But we are not the final chapter. Not yet.